Okay, stand by for systems. Okay, Steve. Okay, you got that. Someone.
After years of unanswered questions, a break in the unsolved Gilgo Beach murders out of Long Island.
Hey, no!
Right, I'm done.
No!
I'm done.
Oh!
You're all right. You're all right. You're all right.
Oh! You dead man! Ah!
A little bit earlier, the Hampton County District Attorney just released new evidence of the abduction and murder of Holly Piirainen of Sturbridge, a serial killer more than 30 years after the last victim was found.
The New Bedford highway murders terrorized the South Coast back in the 80s, and as chief investigator Cheryl Fiandato reports, one victim's family believes the case is one tip away from being solved.
There are new developments in a case that terrorized the central U.S. for decades. Investigators believe the BTK killer may have had more victims than we first knew. Emily at Canton now, and what they found in his backyard this week.
Hey! You wanna get Hey! Hey! What is me? What is me? Hey! Put your hands up! Put your hands up! Get on the ground! Hey, got one in the back! One in the back! I swear to God! That's it! You move your ass! Black pants coming down the hill! Got you on foot! That's the time we don't want to come down the ramp. I'm going to tell you to sit off, you boy. Coming down the ramp, gray sweatshirt, black pants, mask on. Guy just jumped down. Yeah, he just jumped down.
Daddy, where's your car? Never been arrested before in LA? Four down. How long ago? What's your name? What's your name? 11.
Developing this morning, new insight into capturing a suspected serial killer. The California man is believed to be behind a string of brutal murders that started back in July. Well, police say he was caught yesterday while he was hunting for another victim. Here's CBS's Bradley Blackburn.
Stockton, California police say this is the suspected serial killer who has had an entire city frozen in fear. Wesley Brownlee was arrested just after 2 a.m. Saturday near his Stockton home.
Tonight in Moscow, Idaho, Brian Koberger, the man charged with stabbing 4 college students to death, now indicted by a grand jury.
It would have made a frightening Hitchcock thriller if the crimes hadn't been real. A killer was stalking Boston women, raping and strangling them. In the most grotesque manner, he would display his work, and he always left a bizarre calling card, a nylon tied in a granny knot around the neck of each victim.
Good evening. Welcome to 22 News at 11. An intriguing development tonight concerning the search for the killer of Molly Bish.
Understandably, security is extremely tight here at the Pensacola City Jail. On the second floor of this building, Ted Bundy is under constant guard. Authorities are very well aware of the fact that Bundy has twice escaped from jail, and now that they know who he is, they are not about to let him slip away again. When he was arrested shortly after midnight on Wednesday, he was just considered a belligerent speeder. He fought with arresting officer David Lee when Lee stopped him for speeding. Only late last night, following FBI fingerprint identification, did Pensacola police learn they had captured one of the most wanted and, according to the FBI, most dangerous criminals in the country.
On the evening of February 9th, 2004, almost 18 years ago, Maura Murray crashed her car on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, never to be seen again.
I can't. Negative. I can't say. All I can say is this man needed help. This man seemed like a man who was coming up to a storm or to a climax. This very blood-curdling thing at one of the cutoffs where he said, children kill, and then sort of an agonized cutoff, enough to turn your hair whiter than mine.
So inside the thrift shop, St. Vincent de Paul, attorney Melvin Belli and the San Francisco police waited for the Zodiac Killer.
It's not, Devin.
We're going to have a great time together.
It may be the creepiest episode ever on The Dating Game, because this bachelor looking for love back in 1978 is actually a serial killer.
This afternoon, we have learned a convicted pedophile who admitted to assaulting dozens of children will not be getting out of prison today.
A lawyer for Wayne Chapman tells us several things need to be done before he's officially released. Many people are upset that Chapman will even go free. WBZ's Adam Myler has more now at noon from Shirley.
Well, it is a case that has never gone cold for the family of Holly Piirainen, who would have turned 40 years old last month. Today, investigators renewed their call for the public's help with this investigation. Much of it centered on this T-shirt that you see behind me, which was among items found in the area of Brimfield, where Holly's remains were uncovered back in October of 1993. Take a closer look at it, with a very distinguishing color and Boston logo. Within the past 6 months, further forensic testing has been done thanks to advances in testing procedures. Investigators want some very specific information related to it, and Holly Piirainen's family hopes to finally have some closure.
Kohberger has yet to enter a plea, but his previous attorney said he believes he'll be exonerated. The indictment follows his December arrest at his family home in Pennsylvania. More than 45 days after Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found brutally murdered in this college house. According to court documents, Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath at the crime scene, and his white Hyundai Elantra seen driving here during a routine traffic stop.
Devastating. They compare in the annals of crime, they compare absolutely with Janko. Perhaps even worse because they were quiet, deadly.
The Strangler's first victim was Anna Slessers, a 55-year-old divorcee, brutally beaten and strangled while a parade passed down her Back Bay Street. From June 1962 until January 1964, 10 more women would die the same way.
Believes he may have uncovered evidence that could lead to Molly's murderer. A lengthy article in the Worcester Telegram chronicles a custody investigation that ended with Gerald Battistoni serving up to 12 years for raping his girlfriend's daughter.
The former Tacoma and Seattle resident is a suspect in 36 sex killings in Colorado, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. And now he is being questioned in connection with 2 murders at a sorority house at Florida State University in Tallahassee.
As officials announce a suspect is now in custody. Multiple news outlets now reporting the suspect is 59-year-old Rex Heuermann of Massapequa Park.
Let's go off the district. Let's put in another 30 seconds next round. Roger. 008, hold us heading. Indicate 004. How's that? Looks good, Steve, and all systems are okay here. Winds are westerly and 10 knots. Okay, this is NASA 1 calling 10 seconds. Now, 10 seconds, Roger. 0, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I've got blowout. Day for 3. 30. Introduce zero. Inches out again, hold altitude. Correction, alpha 4 small threat collected emergently. Flight common, can't hold it, she's breaking up, she's breaking.
Hey guys, happy Saturday. Good evening. Thank you for being here. We have some things to go over tonight. Some other things that I've learned a lot today. I'm trying to just kind of decide what I can really talk about yet. But one thing that's been in development, Turtle Boy knows with certainty that Karen Reed is guilty. I don't mean that he knows that she's guilty of hitting John. I mean, he knows with certainty, the same certainty that we know the Patriots aren't making the playoffs this year, that Karen is guilty of second-degree murder. I can't say much more about it, but more might be coming out from other sources next week. And I don't mean that he knows because he's figured it out like other people that have looked at the evidence have. I mean because he knows. All right, now, you might accuse me of saying something like that without bringing the receipts. Yeah, it's true. I'm sorry. I'm not bringing the receipts on that for just reasons that it is what it is. So it's a little bit selfish to do it. I'm being selfish here because does it add to the story by telling you that? Because I want you to remember that you heard it here first, that this is the case, okay? And just come back and say, all right, I did hear it there. So it is a little bit selfish that way. But I do think that I've given you reliable information all along here. Whenever I report something, it doesn't turn out to be true, I correct it. This is something I've known for months, but it's a certainty now. It's actually, there's been new developments in it. There's no question. He knows. All of the lawyers involved in this case at any level know with certainty that Karen Reed is guilty and guilty of second degree. They know. So it's not just Lally. It's also Little, Jackson, Yannetti, Bradle. They all know. They all know. And a lot of other people know too. Now, does that mean that she doesn't deserve a fair trial? Of course not. She deserves a fair trial, and all these things have to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. But just, you should know that he knows. And it's eventually going to come out, and you're going to realize that he wasn't telling you the truth. I want you to think about that tomorrow if you're planning on going to the rally. Now, I'm not trying to say you shouldn't go to the rally, because the rally addresses different topics, such as First Amendment rights and the Canton 9 and stuff like that. So there are a lot of reasons to go to the rally. But if you're going to subject any witnesses or people involved in the case, or even police officers related to it, or their family members, to your wrath, just keep in mind, at the end of the day, you're doing it to innocent people. Now, even if you don't 100% believe that now, just take it into heart a little bit that I do always tell you the truth, even though you may not like me for it and I may not be entertaining or anything like that. I do tell you the truth. And I'm telling you the truth here, that she is guilty. This is no longer something of looking at evidence, and you can look at the evidence and understand it. I think everybody that really digs in deep enough eventually gets it. But anyway, so we got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to go over Cellebrite, the senior expert that Cellebrite has assigned to this case, that's going to testify for the prosecution, published a blog related to seemingly what he's going to testify. We're going to go over a little bit. Olivia, we mentioned her the other day. She has some interesting posts that we can go over. We'll look at Wendy. We're going to look at the foundations of the third-party culprit theory, otherwise known as the conspiracy theory. There's, some of this stuff we've gone over in the past, but we're going to go over this stuff. I had an interesting series of communications with, I guess, kind of the first, you might say the first Karen Reader. I'm not going to say her name. I'll give you her initials, J.A. But she's someone that was on to this before Turtle Boy. In fact, she introduced Turtle Boy to the case through Natalie, and then eventually Karen. And she has been described by Natalie as Karen Reed's pit bull. And as you can expect from a pit bull, she's not really someone that's going to get into an intellectual discussion with you. She's not someone that's going to carefully go over the evidence. She's going to latch on to a target and attack. But interestingly, I saw signs in communications this week that she was starting what you might call the slide. Because I've seen this before with so many people that have communicated with me over the last several months, last 6 months, I guess, where they start out as, for the longest time, they're the most nasty, cruelest free Karen readers out there, but then they keep asking questions. And eventually, once that process continues, there's a slide where you fall on the other side of the fence, and there's no way to avoid it. Now, I started to see that in her, pointed it out to her, and she got very angry at me. She has a pit bull. So we'll see what happens in the end. She's one of those people that probably has such a level of cognitive dissonance that if the information that comes into her head gets translated in her brain before it even enters the consciousness. So if she saw Karen Reed get in front of a camera and say, "I'm so sorry I did this. I'm so sorry to John's family. And, I put everybody through this and I confess and I'm sorry." She wouldn't even hear those words. It would be there's like a little elf inside her head that just translates into something else. And so that's a lot of people are like that. But she was showing signs of being on the slide. Tim Daigle in chat just mentioned, am I going to have the Glarer on the show? So the Grifter, the Glarer, is welcome to come on the show anytime he wants. He's welcome to have me on his show. He's welcome to talk to me privately. He's not interested in the truth. He's interested in grabbing some turtle riders. We established that pretty well the other night. His observations about the case were at best similar to some of the stuff that we had in late April, before we had access to documents and actual evidence and heard contradictory arguments from the other side of the case. I'm talking about just the prosecution, like things that were made in court, and had time to sit down and think through all this stuff. So in a way, it wasn't necessarily, it's not indicative of his ability to reason things out, the fact that he's so far behind, because he just jumped on the case a couple of weeks ago to basically be a grifter and grab a slice of Aiden's mob. So I can understand that, but he really doesn't have any interest in the truth. If he did, he would kind of seek out some questions on the other side and try to find out what was going on. I said, you can have my number and you can talk to me in private. If you just really want to know if you just have some big questions that you want answered, I'd be happy to answer them. But he didn't really want that. So he's welcome to come on my show and grift here anytime. I did notice that they're now saying that John was killed because of Jeffrey Epstein. That's now a popular theory on Twitter. It just gets crazier and crazier and crazier, the stuff that goes on. So I want to mention too, just, I do try to take both sides. Now, Wendy Murphy. Wow. She posted in Twitter, looks like someone will be getting indicted and arraigned in Superior Court for Christmas. Just ask the Turtle Man and Karen Reed. It's a strong message to all the other idiots who think they can all right, this is important. This is the important part. Who think they can blog/PR a criminal case into not guilty verdict. Peace on earth. At least in Canton. That's the end of her quote. So I'm not trying to I guess I'm sure if you really give her longer than a tweet, she understands. But this isn't about the arrest of Aiden Kearney had nothing to do with his blogging. Nothing. Or nothing to do with the fact that he represented PR for Karen Reed. That's a fundamental right. She has the right to get people to represent her, and he has the right to represent them and take a position on a case. It was about the way you go about doing things and creating a circus and the rolling rally and all the stuff that you're doing to literally trying to terrify the witnesses. And he made it easier for them to do it too, to prosecute him, because on his show he would continually say things that basically say that's what his goal is. I want to hound these people to this is not a quote. I want to hound these people to the ends of the earth, essentially, until they break down. And he would state repeatedly that's what the goal is. So sorry, I was just getting a text there. So all right, let's get to this Cellebrite report. because this is pretty important stuff. Because this was also another thing that's really just kind of amazing about the case. So Cellebrite, let's see if you guys can see this. All right. So Cellebrite makes the software that does forensic data analysis. I am not obviously a forensic data analyst. I've spent way too much time this summer having to read this about this stuff and about various types of data, such as vehicle data, but I make no pretense to try to be anything, not even an amateur. I'm not even in the amateur ranks on it, but you can make logical analysis about this case. And this was a huge part of this case. So for me, back in April, we were told that the defense had obtained information from Jen McCabe's phone only recently, so in March, so over a year after the case, that the latest software had showed that she had Googled at 2:27 how long to die in the cold. Now, this was presented to us as though it was fact. And so that was powerful. And that was in the very first story that Aiden published on April 18th. And so everything else, when you start with that, any common sense person is like, all right, if she made that search, then she knew he was either out there or was going to be put out there to die in the cold. So there's a conspiracy. I mean, and there was no question. Data was true. And so then as you're looking at all the other stuff, you're more just, aha, that looks, and you're trying to figure out what actually happened. But the one thing you knew was that Karen was innocent if that search was true. And then in June, we found out that it was not indisputed. Lally, the prosecutor, went before the court and gave a detailed explanation, revealed that the state had an independent prosecutor. This was someone named Jessica Hyde. And if you looked it up, you found out she was the best of the best, and that she disputed this. She said, no, the search was made more than likely at 6:23, 6:24. There were 3 searches made. 2 were made at all 3 were made at that time. The state, the defense was saying that 1 search was made at around 2:27 and the other 2 were made at 6:23, which is kind of weird, but they were trying to explain it as though those second 2 searches, each one was spelled a little bit different. So they were trying to say the second 2 searches were an attempt to, I don't, the word would be obscure the first search to make, I don't know how that would work, but somehow trick the software into thinking that all 3 searches were made at that time, because she was trying to cover up the search that she made at 2:27. It was interesting that when she did not click on any websites at 2:27 or any results if that search was made then. So, but the state's expert was saying, no, this is just kind of an artifact of a tab that was opened at that time that was used to search for something else. And then when she went back to her phone at 6:23, something similar to the same tab was used. So you have a dispute here at that point, right? And I'm not saying we don't still have a dispute, but it was no longer certain or even close to certain that 2:27 had actually occurred. So now any sensible person would start going back and from the beginning and start asking all of the different things in this case that convinced them that there was a conspiracy and see which ones still stood up, and then really start digging down to all the other stuff. That's what I started doing this summer, and that's what got people turning very angry at me. But so so the state actually has a senior expert from Cellebrite, and he appeared a couple weeks ago on a report from him showed up on the Discovery. We won't be able to see these until the trial. It hasn't leaked out. And so I had been reporting from even before that Cellebrite was going to testify on behalf of the prosecution. I'm not some big investigative reporter, but you do get things here first. And I had reported that here a while ago. So now the senior analyst, whose name is Ian Whiffen, it looks like, so he did a blog recently that was on a similar topic to this. So basically the same topic. So clearly it's what he had in mind. So he was hired by the state to look into how the hell did this 2:27 search show up. Now, funny thing was, this summer, after it became clear that the state had got an independent expert, Jessica Hyde, who came up with the conclusion that the search was not made at 2:27 a.m. Well, for a month, that troubled a lot of people. And then all of a sudden, Aiden sent I don't know how many people he sent this to, but initially sent it to my partner, knowing that it would go to me because I was still solidly on the middle of the fence stand, and he was trying to influence me. And all it was a chart from the Jessica Hyde's report, not the whole report, just a chart. And it showed, I forget what it was, but it was something 227 unknown. Maybe the origin was unknown. And so they're like, aha. So this proves that she's not really backing up the state. Maybe she's saying it's unknown, but she's not backing up. She's not disputing what the defense found. And they went crazy with this, and this, for even weeks ago, you could still see them throwing that around as though it meant something. But when I saw that, and I think with any normal person, regular person, none of this stuff requires anybody to be particularly smart. It just requires you to be honest. You looked at that and I said, well, where's the rest of it? Where's the rest of the report? They're leaking just this one page that's a chart that shows unknown. Where, if you can leak that, why can't you leak the whole report? Where are the conclusions? Because when someone writes a report, at the end, they write the conclusions, right? But those weren't leaked. Now, months, maybe weeks later, we were finally able to get that from another source. And we saw that, no, Jessica Hyde was fully on board with the idea that all three of those searches came at 623. And there's no question that that's what she's going to testify if this ever comes to trial. But in addition, we found out about the Cellebrite thing. And so here's a blog. Now, it was rinse and repeat, because just as everybody got all excited on the Free Karen Reed side when that little chart that came out that said unknown, when this blog was published maybe a week ago, or I'm not sure exactly when. Let me look and see what the date is for this. Let's see if that's on here. November 24th. So when this came out, they started putting little pieces on Twitter. It's like, aha, see? They actually were saying that they think the prosecution, that this expert is going to testify for the defense, even though he's listed as a prosecution witness, that the results that he found were going to support the defense, and it was going to support Free Karen Reed Nation celebrated. Oh, wow. See, I knew it was true. I knew 2227 was true. They're so desperately in need of this story to be true that there's clearly something goes on here beyond justice for anybody. There's a need for this story for a lot of people. But anyways, I didn't, so I didn't know. And this morning I Googled this guy's name, Ian Whiffen, and found the blog. It's a very short blog. I've linked to it on Twitter. I should have linked to it here in the YouTube description too. If anybody can't find it, they can message me at Kevin Lenahan anytime you want. Any questions on Facebook. If you message the Yellow Cottage Tales, I might not see it. I do go in there every few days and check, but there's a lot of nastiness that goes on in there, and it just gets kind of tedious and boring to read it. So, but if you send me personal messages and you're respectful, I always respond, and I'll send you any information I have. If you request a document, if I have it, I send it. No one should be hoarding information here. So anyways, you get to this document here. The problem in this place, I'm reading from what he says. The problem, the request has always, his writing's not always going to be clear, so we'll have to sometimes read it a couple of times. He's a computer guy. The request has always revolved around the accuracy of the timestamp that can be found in what's called the last viewed time field in the tabs table of the browser state of the database. So this is something that would print out using the software Cellebrite or something similar, but it's not something that we see. But in that printout, this is in the table something called last viewed time. And you would think that's a timestamp and that it's very accurate, right? So he says, this timestamp value is being mistakenly used as an indication of the visit time of the URL in the same record. Mistakenly. I don't know. The Free Karen readers don't see that word. But anyways, in the next sentence, he says, and why wouldn't it be? We have a record with a URL and a page title and timestamp, and it's even called last visited time. So it makes perfect sense. And then he goes on, he says, except that's not what this database is used for. Now you can read that paragraph, those series of sentences there quickly. And I think any rational, sensible, objective person would look at that and understand, even though it's not the most clearest writing there, that what he's saying is that it's understandable that people think the timestamp is going to accurately show the time, except that's not what the database is actually for. So he's setting up an explanation for the fact that that 227 has nothing to do with the time that the search was made. All right, so I'm going to skip over like the technical jargon part, but it's all right. So the good news is, he says, is that if you have relied on this timestamp before, it doesn't necessarily mean it was wrong. In fact, it probably wasn't, or not by much anyway. But let's take a simple look at the issue. All right, so this is another one of the lines that the Free Karen Read people get all excited about, because it sounds like he's saying it's usually accurate. So he's saying the good news is that if you have relied on this timestamp before, it doesn't necessarily mean it was wrong. So there are other cases. I mean, this Cellebrite software is used for these cases all the time. So many cases, they put this whole case is kind of put Cellebrite kind of on trial a little bit, right? Because if this stamp is not accurate, how is it that that it can be relied on for anything that it reports, right? So they're trying to thread the needle here. But he goes through it and he runs a lot of testing to figure out what's going on. And if you go through this, you can see that. I'll skip down. He says, but right away, he running a test, he's able to establish where there is a difference in the timestamp between when the tab was opened and when it was reported. And he said the difference, he says, I have seen this difference be far more than 24 hours in real cases. So the difference can be more than 24 hours. It depends on how you're using your phone. Don't worry, I'm skipping through all the crap that none of us understands and going right to the conclusions. And then we'll be done with this. That's pretty painless, right, guys? So ultimately, while this IE timestamp value can be indicative of when a URL was visited, it is actually the time that the page before loaded. So ultimately, while this timestamp value can be indicative of when a URL was visited, it is actually the time that the page before loaded. I mean, that's game over. That's exactly what Jessica Hyde was saying in different language. I mean, every 3 months, I'm looking at MRI examinations, scans of my body. And depending on who's writing it, the report is completely different language, depending on which radiologist is writing it. It's amazing. You have to learn how to read it. So he says, for normal navigation, it's probably not more than a few seconds away from the reality. This is important, okay? So again, people will seize on this. For normal navigation, it's probably not more than a few seconds away from reality. So, right? So 227, it might be off. Maybe it's 226 and a half, right? But he has another paragraph. So but, anytime something is followed by a but, that tells you there's going to be exceptions, right? So, but likewise, I can also visit a google.com page and not actually submit a search for days, weeks even. When I finally do submit a search, the timestamp will reflect the time that the previous page loaded, not the time I performed this specific search. I don't really understand how Free Karen Read people are reading this and concluding anything else. It's in English. It's not some weird language here. I'll repeat it again. When I finally do submit a search, the timestamp will reflect that this is the specific type of timestamp that comes out in this report. So it's EI, it's called. So that timestamp will reflect the time that the previous page loaded, not the time I performed this specific search. Wow, what else do we need to know on this? So I'll just finish up. Wrapping up, he says, this is a great example of not only how these files can change over time, but how their use can change over time too. And that's something that seems odd, such as a field called the last visited timestamp, may be anything but. So this software, I tried to explain this before months ago, but I'm just not technically capable of using the right words. You need someone smarter and more educated enough stuff than me. But that's what I've learned about data is that these programs are developed by so many different people and they're always in flux. So whatever Apple is using on these programs, it's always being adjusted and changed, and you don't even know it's not being changed for the purposes that we think it is. Apple's not designing programs for this type of situation. It's for multiple other considerations. So his last paragraph was, so while this timestamp or the timestamp from the query string may not be far from the truth, it can only really be treated as an approximation of the time the page was visited, as the possibility that it could actually be much further from reality. Or in the case of the Karen Reed, Jen McCabe search, that would be 4 hours different, right? That's nothing compared to what this guy says here. So, all right. Anyways, I don't really understand why anybody puts any more weight on the 220. I said this week, there's no way that Rich Green is going to testify on 227 or anybody's going to testify on 227. But we'll come back to that in a second. Let's just go over the case. So, all right. So the foundations of this case, one of them is 227. That's where we started, right? You can cross that off the board. It's not going to be there. And it's also, even if you still cling that it might be useful in terms of creating some kind of reasonable doubt, it's not going to be used in the trial. And this is why. I mentioned it. I'll make it brief because I mentioned it already this week. But Jen McCabe is going to be the main witness in this trial because she was the person that she was the one that invited them from the waterfall back to 34 Fairview. She was texting John and calling John and waiting for them at the house. She's a witness from the window. She's and then later on, she's the person that Karen called and was with Karen when they found John. All of that stuff is just, she's going to be on the stand probably for days, right? I mean, she's going to be sitting there feet away from the jury. If you've ever been on a jury, you see how close it is. It's not like it is on TV. You're like right there. You can smell her perfume. She's going to be a real human being to those people on the jury. Okay. Now, she's going to be talking about a man's death who had been her friend for many years. Someone who she was daily then and is daily now, a presence in helping to raise John's nephew and niece who he was raising. And he had no experience as a father. So he needed the help. And Jen and Kerry had stepped up to do this. And Kerry Roberts. And so in order to make this third-party culprit thing stick, if you want to go with this conspiracy theory, if you're going to go with 227 as a basis of it, you have to convince the jury that Jen is a sociopath, okay? And that she is a sociopath that's capable of going back to Alan Jackson's theory from the summer, that she's being part of something that set him up to go into the house. Right. But if nothing else, she's in the house. Something goes wrong. John gets attacked. He's fighting for his life, throwing up, bleeding, unconscious. And she has no interest in calling for help. OK, and she's part of a conspiracy that forms to make sure he dies so that nobody gets in trouble for this. Sorry, I need a cough drop. It's going to be it's an impossible sell. To be able to get the jury to see that is just not going to work. She's, like I said, she's going to spend several days up there. She's a soccer mom. In order for that theory to fly, they're going to have to believe that she's a sociopath capable of not only killing a friend, but staying there, watching him die. Now, their theory is that they put John out, and this came straight from Karen's mouth, that they put John out sometime later. Actually, the way Karen described it, after Karen called Jen and woke her up. So that gave them the opportunity. she's on the way out to search. So let's throw the body out there now. So that was the time they made the decision to put John out on the lawn. And so you've got this Jen as Lex Luthor in there, Hannibal Lecter, all rolled into one. Is the jury going to believe that? A woman who's never committed a crime? Woman who's just a soccer mom in her 40s? No, of course not. So what happens though is we're thinking that what's going to go on is that the defense is just going to try to throw anything out there and hope that something sticks, and that way a juror will seize on that and use that for reasonable doubt. But what attorney Kevin Mahoney made me understand is that it doesn't work that way, because the jury starts out kind of giving the benefit of the doubt to the prosecution, but doubting the defense, because they understand that most trials involve people that are probably guilty, and the defense in every one of those says my client didn't do it. So they understand that. So that being the case, they're kind of looking at the defense team a little bit skeptically. And so the defense has to win them over, and they have to be perfectly credible. And if they do something that makes it seem like they're playing games and they're not telling the truth, then the jury will tune them out, and they'll tune out all of their arguments afterwards, and it's over. And it went, so if they lose the jury with that credibility, if they lose that credibility, then it's no longer even going to be possible for them to say that it was an accident, that Karen, that it was not only was there was an accident, but that she didn't know she did it. Because that was Karen's original defense, that it was going to be, was that I had no idea that I hit him. Now we know that that's not true, but you'll find that out later. But so that was the defense, and that was the key. So the defense team still needs to be able to have that place to go to in their arguments, but they won't be able to do that if their credibility is shot, because they try to portray Jen McCabe as this evil person capable of killing her friend, a true sociopath, someone who, at the time that supposedly John was murdered, her heart rate never went up, but someone whose heart rate did go up into the hundreds when they found John at the scene and stayed up for an hour. Her heart rate was completely normal at home when she was supposedly planning this conspiracy. Her heart rate was normal when Karen called at 5. It wasn't until later that it went up. So the jury's going to see all that. So I'm sorry, 227 is gone. Then you got the health app data. Now this may be the only data that Rich Green has brought in to actually talk about. It's the same. Oh, there were also deletions too, right? Supposedly there were no deletions. Deletions were just automatic file deletions that have nothing to do with a human actual deleting them. But it was very easy for Rich Green to kind of pull that up and say, aha, and that's his job. That's what he was paid to do. So anyways, the health app data shows that John walked X amount of steps. I forget, it was 90 steps or something like that, or 90 meters. I don't have the data in front of me. And then he walked up and down 3 flights of stairs. But that really is just indicating it's an app that has to kind of make a calculation based on your elevation as to whether you're walking up and down stairs. And it didn't. It's not like the app reports. Sorry, a little cold. It's not like the app said John went up and down stairs. It's Rich Green looked at the elevation changes and said John went up and down stairs. Apologize. So at the time that Rich Green found that he was going up and down stairs, that was between 12:20 and 12:20, I think 12:20 and 12:24. But at that time, according to John's GPS, they were still a mile away. They didn't arrive until 12:24. That same GPS shows that John never went in the house. So almost what certainly was happening was the health app was misinterpreting things, or Rich Green was misinterpreting those results that they were actually driving there on the way. Now, people have tried to say, and Olivia has tried to say, well, why do people listen to health? If you're saying that the health app data is wrong, why is it used in other cases? Okay, this is easy. All right. When you look at data, you have to try to look at the total picture. It's the same thing whether it's the 227 search or this, you look at the big picture and the surrounding evidence. So if, for instance, let's say, for example, you have a crime where a killer shows up, goes into a house and goes up to the third floor. Maybe, for instance, like in Idaho. I'm not saying that this data exists for that, but I'm just saying it's a similar situation like that. And let's say that there's a video camera that sees the person pull up in their car and walk into the house. Well, in that situation, we're looking at multiple data streams and we know that that person arrived there. And then you can use the health app data to say, yeah, he went up to the third floor. Because the GPS puts him there at a time and a place. So you're looking at the totality of evidence. You're not just cherry picking some little thing out. So there are cases where health app data actually absolutely is crucial to helping to get a conviction. But you can't just pluck this out and say, well, see, they're looking at the totality of the data. So the idea that the health app data is going to be more accurate about time and location than GPS, which is designed by the military to put a missile through somebody's window from 1,000 miles away, is crazy. All right. But fortunately, we'll have another way to settle this by trial, presumably. So Karen had a phone too. So as they eventually access this data, by now, presumably they just haven't published any reports on it. If that data, if the GPS on her phone shows the same as John's, that basically matches it time and place, why would anybody look at the health app data? And I'm pretty confident that Karen's phone is going to match John's phone. So I can't think of any reason why the health app data will even be brought up. I mean, you try to, maybe that's something where you can try to bring it up and see if something sticks on it, but you're not actually, you're just hoping something sticks in a juror's mind, but at least you're not impeaching somebody else's credibility or impeaching somebody else, like Jen McCabe and trying to turn her into an evil monster. All right. So 227 is gone. The health app data is gone. What else do we got left? Well, we got little things like Brian not coming out of the house. But again, Jen's going to testify that she went upstairs and woke him up. And we know that the first responders came in without the sirens on. So they were there a short time, I think less than 10 minutes. So all this commotion was going on the lawn in about a 10-minute period before, maybe 15, I don't know. And then Jen goes into the house because she's called her sister twice and her brother-in-law once, and they haven't woken up. So she finally gets into the house and goes up and wakes them up. And so why didn't they wake up? I mean, it was a snowy night. There's a blizzard outside. That you can hear the wind howling on that recording from Karen's phone in the back seat of the car. It was recorded over John's voicemail. You can hear the wind howling. It's a blizzard. That's going to drown out really most of any of the kind of the outside sound. So whatever reason, he just didn't wake up, and that's just the way it is. If you want to balance that against all the other data, I mean, it doesn't really come up very good. So another thing was the dog fight wounds. I'm telling you, the canine evidence has come back negative on the clothing, independent lab. Those are not dog wounds, period. I can't bring you the receipts on that until that's made official. You can trust me or not. It comes from a really good source, an indisputable source. And is that a leak? No. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, who knows where these things come from? They're not leaking from the prosecution, right? I know where it's coming from. But anyways, there's not going to be, there weren't dog wounds. They just weren't. Okay. I mean, you got, if you still doubt there's no way that a dog attacks his long sleeve shirt and it ends up with no saliva, no dog DNA, no dog cells, no dog material. There's no way. So once you see that that's negative, there's no reason you're going to put that by a jury. But if you don't believe that now, like I said, you have the two medical examiners, one that signed off, but two medical examiners did the analysis on John 2 days later. And they concluded it was shallow abrasions. Shallow abrasions are not what you get from animal nails or animal teeth. Okay. Shallow abrasions. And the emergency room staff all said kind of something similar. Nobody thought that it was a dog. And there have been numerous other medical personnel who have gone on other shows to look at the pictures and say that's not what that is. So the only people that are saying that what we see on John's arm is evidence of an animal attack are the defense team and amateurs like us. Medical people are not saying that. Now, I'm sure the defense will find somewhere in this great big land of ours that will testify and say that they're animal attacks, because you can always find the defense teams can always find somebody. But I'm not seeing anybody any medical expert coming forward and saying that. I haven't seen any. You can tell me if you have, but I haven't seen anybody. And I've challenged for months for people to send me a picture that looks and anything similar to that. And no one has sent me any. In fact, one time somebody did send me one, and it looked so bizarrely like it. I was like, oh my God, that really looks just like it. But then when I looked more closely, I realized it actually was a picture of John's arm that they put upside down. So that's why it looked very much like it. So they are not that. In addition, is the defense going to go and try to say, I think they might do this a little bit. They might say that it looks like John was in a fight because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And they're going to show that picture. And when you first look at that, you see those swollen eyes and you see a couple of scratches and you're like, wow, this guy looks like he's really been 10 rounds with a young Mike Tyson. So, it might have some impact, but but the only way that has impact, though, is if you start to take apart other aspects of the prosecution's case and make it seem like the prosecution, I'm not talking about the police, but the actual prosecution is not being honest with the jury, because the prosecution is going to go up there and they're going to present numerous medical experts. They're going to say, no, that swelling is something that medical people are very familiar with. It's the result of broken bones, small broken bones in the back of the skull. And you have not, again, just like with the dog thing, even more so, you have not seen a single medical professional go in the air to say that he looks like he's been in a fight, because they all understand what those wounds, what causes that. They all understand it. I've talked to multiple people and they all understand it. So there's not going to be any sign. They're not going to be able to say that there was signs in a fight. Little bruise on his hand. That's probably just rigor mortis. This is the games that they play, just like when they tried to sell us on the non-human hair. Will they talk about Proctor's connections to the Alberts? Well, the only connections are to Chris Albert's wife. Was that enough that he should have been dismissed? It's not like anybody called Proctor and assigned him to the case. He's not even the senior officer on the case. Buchanan outranks him and Tully outranks them both. So was it really a bad idea to put a state trooper from Canton on this case? Probably. Just for the optics of it, it's better off to make sure you have someone that's truly independent. And I think that represents another area where police don't necessarily think things through as well as they should, especially when it comes to the trial. They're more trying to solve the case when they really have to focus on not only solving it, but the trial. And then the last thing, that the last leg, all those things are kind of dismissed, but the last thing is Lucky, right? So Lucky says that he drove multiple times down the street between 2 and 3. I don't know why. It doesn't seem like there could have been any snow on it, maybe a dusting. I don't know if he was also involved with treating the road. If you're from down south, you may not know, but the roads up here get treated before a storm. It used to be they would put sand down or salt. I don't know what this treatment stuff is. It's probably something that has salt in it and it sprays down. I don't know if Lucky did that. And so when he drove by multiple times between 2 and 3, was that what he did? You know what? I'm going to see if I'm going to get you this pic. Give me 1 second. I'm going to get you a picture that's really important to understanding why people wouldn't be able to see. John, where did I put this picture? Hold on 1 second. Oh, okay, I got it. Oh, I just got to open it. Okay, and now I just got to share it with you. Okay, so this is a picture. Now, I don't know if I can make this bigger for you. I guess this just is what it is. All right, so if you look there, though, if you're able to see on this, you see the flagpole, you see the fire hydrant, and you see a little bit behind and to the left of the fire hydrant is an electrical box. So it's on like a little support thing there. You see the tree there, and you see the mulchy area. John was reported, we don't know exactly where he was found, but he was reported to be found 12 feet off the street. So looking at that picture there, you would say the fire hydrant is what, 2 or 3 feet off the street? And the flagpole, what, maybe 6 feet? That's hard to tell from the flagpole. But so John was found somewhere 12 feet, so back in the area, well off the street, but surrounded by other objects and underneath the tree. So you could see it would be very difficult for somebody driving or walking down there if John is lying unmoving. There's no street light here. I think the nearest street light is 75 feet away. It's extremely dark right there. And it's a snowstorm night, so there's not a star in the sky. So there's no light at all. And then at some point, John is covered with a little bit of snow. So we don't know exactly what time, but let's just say even by 3 o'clock when like 2 o'clock. So let's say by 2 o'clock, was he covered with a dusting of snow? Maybe. And a dusting would be enough to really further help him blend in there. So just as a dark object covered in a dusting lying on that spot of the yard. I mean, you can see where it would be. I think you can see where it'd be. Let me make it, if I can make this a little bit more screen for you. Yeah. All right, I'm back. So it comes down to Lucky. Lucky didn't see a body there. We don't know for sure exactly what Lucky will say on the stand and what investigators found about Lucky. It's interesting. I'm not here to smear anybody. And I just know as a general rule, from what I have found in other cases that I've looked at, is that witness testimony that is not backed by other witnesses or by the physical evidence is suspect. Doesn't mean the person is lying. There's all kinds of reasons that it ends up being suspect. It's just in every single case that I've looked at, there is going to be certain witnesses that have testimony that on the surface of it looks good, but has to be dismissed because it just doesn't match what's there in every case. Or even just big events like 9/11 or JFK, assassination, things like that. There's always things that just don't fit and they have to be dismissed. So it looks to me like it might be coming down just to Lucky because everything else there's not much here. And there's going to be a lot of evidence that links Karen to this. Oh, and the one other part was the planted evidence. So it's absolutely essential to this theory that taillight evidence be planted in the snow. If it wasn't planted, there's no conspiracy. If it was planted, there is. And so the defense is going to have to try to show that evidence was planted there. And how convincing, how realistic is the chance to do that? Because it was a difficult thing with evidence in a snowstorm. So Turtle Boy's main objection was, when I talked to him this summer, that the Canton police, CPD, found the cocktail glass that broke there, the broken pieces of cocktail glass, but they did not find the taillight pieces. And that sounds like a big aha, right? Until, again, this is why it's important to not just come in and get your information from one side. You have to come in and get all the information and take a close look if you are actually interested in the truth. So the snow around John up on that spot of the lawn, it all melted. It was, but it was still only a few inches by that time when they found John, 2-3 inches, and his body heat or whatever had melted it or just prevented it from fully. There was snow on John. There was at least a couple inches on John that had to be brushed off, but the snow in the grass around him had melted. So by the time the police were there, they were able to find things in that. They were able to find the cocktail glass pieces in the snow. But they did not find the taillight glass pieces. Those pieces were found later on by the state police. Now, is that your big aha? Well, different things happen to those pieces of glass or plastic. We don't know. We don't have, the state has an accident reconstruction. We don't know what it is. So we were left to kind of guess on it and take a couple of stabs at it. But if a vehicle hit John while he had a glass in his hand, and he did, and it sent him back with any kind of momentum, the glass has that same momentum, according to physics, in his hand. And it keeps that even if it comes out of his hand. So it's going to end up more or less near where he does. The taillight pieces were different. If that exploded on a part of John's body, that sprays around the point of impact, which would be on the street. And then the plow goes by and plows it up. So all that stuff gets plowed up inside a snowbank, a plow bank. And that's what happened here. That's where the pieces were found. So in order for someone to have planted evidence here, they have to have gone down there and buried it inside a plowed snowbank, which generally requires a shovel to do that. It's not like you can just go in there and, I mean, in theory, maybe if it's still soft, but usually that snow tends to be a little bit harder that's been plowed up. So the main piece was found at 5:45. So let's work our way backwards. The car was towed from Dighton at 4:18, and in normal conditions, it's a 45 minute drive to the Canton police station where they took it. Let's say they managed to do, even though it was during a blizzard during rush hour on one of the busiest highways in America, I-95, maybe they still managed to make it in 45 minutes. Maybe the snow kept the traffic off the road a little bit. So they get back to Canton a little after 5. The tow truck driver has to unload the truck and get out of there, and then Proctor or whoever tampers with the evidence. The crime scene is at least 5 minutes away. According to Google Maps, it's 8 minutes. So, but let's just say 5 minutes. So maybe if all goes incredibly well, Proctor's able to get to the crime scene at 5:15, 5:20, with his bag of taillight pieces. Well, who's there at that time? We're gonna find out at trial that location was extremely crowded. That the CERT team was already setting up. That they got to set up lighting, because it's a nighttime search, and that there were neighbors outside watching, and that there were news crews there. We can see the news crews. I showed it on my channel, the footage of this. I don't know how many news crews were there, at least one, because we've seen clips of it. And you can see all of those guys walking out with shovels. So again, the shovel. So let's go back to see, why didn't CPD find that glass? They were never going to take a shovel to a state police crime scene, and it was automatically going to revert to the state police as soon as John died, and they knew he was going to die, and he officially did die at 7:50. They would have got the call, and that's it. Now it's a state police crime. It's a state police scene. That's automatic in Massachusetts, unless you're in Worcester, Springfield, or Boston. All the other, so CPD is just a small police force. They aren't trained to investigate murders. They don't have the equipment. That's why they had to take some of the blood samples and put them in party cups that they got from neighbors. They're not trained or equipped to run an investigation. So there's no way they were ever going to interfere with the state police CERT team, which is all of those things. They weren't going to do it. So and imagine how the state police reacted. They found out those guys took a shovel to their crime scene. No, it's like, there's no way they're going to do that. So they're just going to hands off and wait and let the state police get their shit, sew it together, and come in and do their thing. Why did it take so long? I don't know. Why does it take so long to get your driver's license renewed in Massachusetts? Why is it? I mean, it's a state operation. It's just It is what it is. It's why do all these test results take so long? Not just in this case, but in every case. It's a bureaucracy, and that's just the way it is. They're not a rapid response team. Should they be? I don't know, probably, but they're not, and they aren't going to be. You're not going to find that they are in any case. So they began their investigation in their own methodological, process of going through it. And so when the CERT team got there and started setting up, and then they started digging. We don't know what time they started digging, but I doubt they found that main piece that they found in the first search. So I'd say that they will probably set up there for maybe an hour, right? And we're going to find out at trial. And if it's true, as I believe it will be, that all these people are going to testify that the scene was packed with people, there's no way that a trooper could have gone in there and started burying pieces inside the plowed snowbank. No way. So I don't think that there's anything to the planted evidence theory of this at all. Maybe they'll try to put that by a jury. I don't know. At least raise some questions about it, right? So I think that's about it on the foundations of the case. So one last thing I wanted to look at. Oh, so where it is, there was a Scanlon sighting last week at the courthouse, Norfolk County. Not going to say more than that. People will understand what he was testifying about, I think. And you guys can figure it out. Sometimes I have to just give you the dots and you have to connect them. So all right, so a couple of things just on Olivia. Now, Olivia does a lot of in-depth reports on here. She's definitely way into she's done deep analysis, deep dives into the information, even the timing of when reports go through. That's why I wondered how close she was to the defense. I don't know anything about her. Somebody actually posted on Twitter today that she graduated high school last year, which would be amazing. And if that's the case, and if she's just somebody that has taken an interest in this case, then she has a very bright future. And I'm really glad that she's somebody that's doing that. I don't know if she has any connection directly to the defense. Kind of speculate on that just because some of the information that she has seems so in the weeds in terms of the process of when reports came. But I don't know, maybe she's just a really, really good researcher. And so we'll give her the benefit on that. But some of the things, if she is just someone who's not connected to the defense and she's just someone who's into this case, good. But not a bad idea to maybe try to dig into both sides if you're going to go that deep, instead of just trying to put everything to prove a theory that you've maybe bought into early on. There's no shame in that. Try to get to the truth. That's all. I'm not trying to tell you to jump on the other side of the fence or anything, but show some signs that you're asking questions on both sides. So here, just taking a look at some of the posts that she had. So she asked, I think today, how did John end up on and often they're good questions that she brings up. How did John end up on the front lawn, 12 feet away from the roadway where you allege these taillight pieces were found? I'm not sure who she's applying to here, but the taillight pieces were not found 12 feet away. How do you know where all right, this is where I almost, if I don't know if Alan Jackson has a daughter or a niece, you almost like this. I mean, she speaks like Alan Jackson with the same kind of trickery. She says, how did you know where the 35, she's addressing this to Proctor, obviously then. How did you know where the 35 pieces of taillight were found, given the 5 searches recovering over 90% of the pieces were undocumented? Did you catch the trick there? She's saying that 90% of the pieces that were found were undocumented. That's tricky. That's very tricky, because anybody sensible reading that will say 90%. Wait a minute, that's not true. All right. There were 35 pieces of found. So she's saying 90% of them they were found later. But not all these pieces were the same size, because I will tell you, I don't have a data on this, but I can tell you just looking at the pictures that if maybe 90% of the pieces were undocumented, however, 95% of the total taillight mass found was in that one piece that they found at 545. So she's treating all these pieces equally, but in reality, they found that main piece and they probably found some other smaller pieces. And then over time, as snow melted, because it was a big storm that came, over 12 inches of snow that day. And I know turtle people maybe don't know this, but snow melts, and it was melting over the next week. And so apparently Proctor or other people were going in there and finding those pieces or spotting them and then calling in Proctor. Now, is he supposed to document every one of those? I don't know. Probably. I'm not a cop. I don't know. Is that a violation of procedure? Is that sloppiness? Is that laziness? Maybe. I just don't really know. But it also seems a little bit kind of penny candy to me. I mean, they already found the main pieces and someone's calling them back because the snow melted enough to expose a couple of little tiny pieces. So what? I mean, that shouldn't really impact your thinking on this case, because it doesn't. It's kind of crazy. So, there was a couple other things I had. A couple of other good posts on Scan One. I mean, not on Scan One, from Olivia. All right, so she's going here. I'm going to try to read all right. So why did Buchanan and Proctor already know what? This is a good question. Why did Buchanan and Proctor already know what killed John O'Keefe before they'd spoken with / interviewed any witnesses, visited the scene, or viewed the victim's body at the hospital? Because before they even started the investigation, it was all about framing the girlfriend. And then she does throw in an interesting piece of evidence. I have to squint my eyes to read this because it was something she linked to. This is from I can recognize this as a page from the defense theory on this. I think the one that was submitted in April. It says, according to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Office of the Chief Medical Examiner Death Notification Report, Trooper Buchanan called that office at 10:41 a.m. on that day, so January 29th, stating that the case is now being treated as a suspicion due to a domestic situation that happened after D, I guess that's deceased, D left the bar. There is a possibility the deceased was struck in the face with a cocktail glass. So that is really interesting. And I've heard this before. Sean talked about it a lot. So we don't know exactly what time the troop. My understanding is that Proctor didn't arrive until early in the afternoon, but I'm not even sure about that. So they got it. They trickled in at their various points as the state investigation formed on this. Like I said, kind of slow, maybe because of the blizzard. I don't know. Interesting though. So at 10:41, the theory was that it was a cocktail, that these injuries were from the cocktail glass. Is that suspicious, right? Because if they believe that it was a domestic dispute due to the cocktail glass, then back to Olivia's question, why did they, it doesn't really, I don't know. It just says why did they think that, I already know, why did John O'Keefe kill before they spoke when interviewing witnesses? So basically just saying, so why did they form a conclusion that this was Karen before talking to the other witnesses or looking inside the house? So that's at 10:41. Now, I don't know. This is the problem with this case, is we will get answers at the trial from Trooper Buchanan, why he wrote that at that time at 10:41, where he was, the steps that he took. Same thing with Proctor. Did they arrive together? Did they arrive independently? Were they called and told things on the phone before they got there? Those are all the things that we have to find out. And at this point, it's very reasonable to ask any of these questions and get to the bottom of it. Knowing everything else we know in the case, it's not reasonable to go, aha, that's proof of a conspiracy. You're jumping the gun. Because most of these, I'm sure all of these things will have, I shouldn't say sure. We should all guess that most of these things will or might have a reasonable explanation. So for instance, I don't believe that. All right. So at that point, John's body is in the hospital. And so at 10:41, he hasn't been to the hospital. The body was removed from the scene after only about 10 minutes. So he's probably getting word from the CPD who only got a quick look at the body before the first responders took it and put it on the ambulance, put John on the ambulance. So he's asking them, well, what did this look like? What had happened there? And they had no idea. All they knew is there were injuries and there was a broken cocktail glass. So they had no idea, you know, for all they knew, they might find out that someone had their wrist slashed or their throat slashed or something like that. So probably not surprising that the Canton police maybe told the state trooper at that time that it looked like it was a domestic and involved the broken cocktail glass. I think it's probably going to be that or something similar to it that you're going to find. But if you're going to have a reasonable discussion about this, you shouldn't start with that. You look at something unknown like that and say, aha, it's all about framing the girlfriend. Well, there's no evidence of that either. If let's just say, let's play it out from that angle. Let's just say the Alberts know the troopers or know Proctor or somebody or have some way of getting to the troopers and say, look, we need to frame the girlfriend. And we wanted to make it seem like there was a car accident. So why, if that's the case, why would the trooper be saying anything about a domestic with a cocktail glass? You know what I'm saying? That doesn't fit. What the trooper said there, it prompts legitimate questions, but it also doesn't fit any kind of a theory of a conspiracy. I mean, because if that's what he's saying at that point, he couldn't have been in on the conspiracy if there was a conspiracy, you know. Just worth pointing that out. Let's see, I got that's all I actually had from Olivia today. So yeah, I guess that's all I'm going to go into that. There's some other stuff, but all right, so I'll jump into questions here. Mark says TB is starting. So I understand people are going to go over. That's fine. Sorry, I couldn't see your questions before because I had a note thing up. So rolling back to Olivia now. I don't know if that's the same Olivia. Probably not. Y'all get this. They found a fucking straw on the ground in the morning, but no taillight. Yeah, I get that because the straw was with the cocktail glass, right? And the cocktail glass was with John, right? And that's how that was found. So Judy, Mark, you referring to Jen McCabe? Okay, sure. Then if Jen takes the stand, Karen should as well. I bet she breaks down in 10 minutes. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. Is Karen going to take the stand? I don't think so. They usually don't in these cases, right? Because it's going to be so easy to get tripped up. And she's already made so many different statements that I don't think she's going to take the stand. But let's see what else we're getting caught up in the questions. How come they could find clear glass on that day, but no real red taillight? Well, I think I addressed it. I will again if you want, but the taillight pieces were inside the plowed snowbank, Kelly. And there's no way that the Canton police were going to take a shovel to that. And so, and in fact, at that point, they didn't even have a reason. In fact, at that point, they had no reason to think that it was a hit and run. So they saw the cocktail, they saw some blood sprayed on the snow, and they thought it was a fight. So they didn't even have any reason to go digging around in that plowed snowbank. But they wouldn't have anyways, because there's no way they're going to take a shovel to a state police crime scene. Let's see. Wicked Psychic, she's responding to Comfort and Joy. I didn't see her comment because I'm trying to start at the end, near the end. So I haven't seen any report that they specifically looked for dog DNA. They weren't. Oh no, yes they were. I've seen the report on this summer. The defense asked for this to be tested, and there was an agreement between them and the prosecution. Administered by the court that they would go to an independent lab. I've given the name of the independent lab on the channel before. I can't think of it at the moment, but yeah, it was definitely sent off for. It's called the letter K9 testing. That's actually what the testing is called, and it's to look for canine material. Carol says, I have no idea who killed John or how his death occurred. I only know that Karen is innocent. But see, how do you know? You know, I don't know how it's. It's I don't know. How do you know this? Does this arise to the level of belief at some point? If you have a mixture of evidence and there are some things that bother you about the prosecution's case, okay, that makes sense. But there should be things that bother you the other way too, right? And so it's not unreasonable to say, hey, I don't know what happened and I'm interested and I want to get to the bottom. But I don't know how you could know she's innocent with all this evidence against her. Mark Sweeney says, why are you so biased? I'm not biased. I was on the fence all summer, and a lot of you same people that come here got mad at me for that and was saying, get out the fence. I will stay on the fence as long as that's where the evidence is. But once the evidence adds up to a point where I feel like I can draw conclusions, I'm going to get off. So what you call biased is not biased. It's drawing a conclusion based on months of looking closely at the evidence. You may disagree with my conclusions. That's fine. Everybody has the right to have their own conclusions. What I do in this channel is what anybody can do. Anybody can start a YouTube channel. I'm looking at the evidence and giving you my analysis, my conclusions. It's not biased. I don't have anything in this case. It doesn't matter to me who committed the crime. I'm not on anybody's side. Kerry Gold said that TB's block at the start, Karen Reed denied asking, could I have hit him? And then Karen on TV saying she asked the question. So, yeah, so she's pointing out another contradiction. There's a lot of contradictions in Karen's testimony. And, you know, maybe some of it you can try to chalk up to confusion or whatever. But, I mean, it's if she testifies, it's going to be difficult for her to explain a lot of things. Someone named Heels in the Air says it'll be easy enough to see if snow is manipulated in order to hide the taillight. Yeah, it would be if they were looking for it, right? Heels. But I don't think they had any reason to be suspecting of evidence being planted. Maybe they should, right? Maybe police should always have their antenna up for that stuff. But are you saying that it would be easy that they would just see it? Yeah, I guess it probably would be. Yeah, I think you're right that unless the conspirators did a really good job planting and covering their tracks, it would probably look like somebody had buried it there. Olivia is the same. Olivia. Oh, okay. Well, welcome, Olivia. I hope you don't think I'm picking on you. I'm not picking on you when I go over your posts. It's out of respect because I think you have a lot of really intelligent posts and you're very informed in the case. So I appreciate you contributing here, and you're welcome on my show anytime. I understand you may go on Dave's show, and I've been really interested to hear you speak. So I've told Dave, you let me know when she's on the show because I will be watching, and not only watching, but telling everybody else to watch. So I hope you do come on. But if somebody had posted today that you were a young person, like just out of high school or something, and maybe you're just interested in the case and you see a future for yourself in as a lawyer or a forensic investigator. So I think it's great. I think it's great. Mo says if Olivia is a high school or college student, she wouldn't be able to get her homework done because she writes all day. Well, she doesn't write all day. She's thorough, you know, and maybe some people are good readers. You're able to get through that evidence pretty quickly. Timothy is still here. All right, brother. He says, what's the whole point of going over every conspiracy theory if you have the proof that Karen did it? I have to choose my words carefully on that answer. Some types of proof are never going to make it to the trial for certain reasons. Think, for instance, I don't want to say it. So I'm just not going to say I'm sorry. I'm just going to leave it hanging there at that. And I apologize for that because I really do hate leaving things. And maybe it's a mistake to do that. I think it'll come out somewhere else. And when we do, we'll just go with that. Heels in the Air says, why would a live person in the snow, not knowing if he might get up and why? I think she meant why leave a person in the snow. Exactly. So the plan is absurd. If the conspiracy theory is absurd, the idea that they have him in the house until 5, he's not dead, he's still breathing, but they already know by the time Jen gets home that the plan is to kill him by leaving him outside alive in the snow. I don't understand that plan. That's crazy. I mean, you've all seen the episode of The Sopranos where he just kills Christopher you could easily do that, and you're not going to leave any evidence that he was killed. So he's unconscious. You just squeeze off his air and he's going to die, right? It doesn't make the whole theory doesn't make any sense. And that's the problem. If you take that 10,000 foot view of an air over the case and looking at it, you're going to find a lot of things that seem odd and make you say, maybe something went on here. Absolutely. But you're also going to see a lot of things that should make you skeptical and say, all right, this seems unlikely. And that's where you should be at the start of this case, is that, all right, there's odd things that don't add up, and there's things that are not acceptable, that make a conspiracy very unlikely. And then you dig down. And so Olivia has been digging down into the evidence, so that's great. Just ask questions from both sides, Olivia. If you're now, see, it all depends on what she wants to do. If she wants to be a lawyer, then your job is an advocate. So then she's getting great practice for that. She's being an advocate for the defense here. If she wants to be a journalist, that's different. Then you should be trying to go down both sides and try to get to the truth. Alana said, how many times did she change her story? Yeah, quite a few times. Wicked psychic defendants that don't take the stand, doesn't it make them guilty? No, it doesn't make them guilty, right? No, I mean, and most defendants, like the Murdaugh case was unusual that he did take the stand, and it seems to have backfired. So Fiona said she would have to go with a third-party culpability accusation. Yes, she does, but it's on the defense to try to come up with a more plausible way to do it. They tried to do that over the last 8 months, but a lot of that stuff are not things that they can say to a jury. Meredith says, do you really think it's okay to not photograph and document evidence? All right, that's a fair question. Listen, I've been extremely critical. Sorry, cop Nicole Reeland had said, I've been very critical of the fact that neither the Dighton cop nor Trooper Proctor took a picture of the taillight in Dighton. To me, it seems common sense, but from their perspective, they must be thinking, well, all this is going to be just documented when we get it back to the station. But to me, it seems common sense because something could happen to that vehicle while it's being towed. It could end up in an accident, right? So especially you're driving in foul weather. So why not just snap a couple of pictures? I don't really understand why they didn't. So I think it's, so it's fair to say that. As far as documenting evidence, maybe sloppiness, but I mean, was it really necessary to see those little extra pieces of glass were not really, taillight plastic were not instrumental to the case, but somebody's probably calling up. We know the chief of police drove by and said, aha, I see something here in the melting snow. We all found that very suspicious at first, right? But listen, I'm okay with you thinking it's more important than I do. So I don't dismiss that. I mean, I would like to see actually what the trooper says, and I'd like to see maybe what other police say. Is that the kind of thing that they might just out of laziness or sloppiness not document, or maybe they're not required to document every single time they pick up a little piece of glass? I don't know. But I agree, it seems like to be truly, technically, formally true to what you're doing, maybe you do have to document it, and that they didn't might be sloppy. But I don't believe it's indicative of a conspiracy or changes the evidence in the case when stacked up against everything else. Mo, I believe she's a turtle troll spitting BS for her lunatic boss. I'm not. She's talking about Olivia. I mean, I don't know. I hope not. I don't think so. So Kelly says, so the clear glass was there, but no, I already said it, so I'm not going to. All right, Mark, why weren't the clear glass, so the cocktail glass, in the plowed snow? I've already explained it, but again, I understand you guys are probably kind of watching Turtle and then watching this a little bit. Maybe if Turtle goes to commercial or something. The cocktail glass was in his hand. And so when he was sent back in the direction that he ended up by the collision, at some point the glass came out of his hand. But when it was in his hand, when he was struck, that means it ends up with all the same momentum, according to the laws of physics, that was put on John. And so he's flying back in that direction. I don't mean flying literally airborne, but he's going back in that direction with the glass in his hand. And it has all that same energy that was put into it from the collision from the SUV going at high speed. And so that glass ended up there. But the glass, the taillight, the plastic taillight pieces from the taillight would have just exploded around the area and ended up on the ground. And then later on, they were plowed up. Timothy Daigle, he's a very emotional guy. Come on, Kevin, if they thought it was a fight, they would have searched the house. You're so full of crap. I didn't say they thought it was a fight in the house. And we don't know when exactly decisions were made here in the timing of it. I do think that after 7:50, the Canton police were done. They knew the state police would be taken over. So they were not going to search the house. They also didn't do something that they should have done, which was to take that. Karen's SUV was back in the garage. Karen went to the hospital. They needed to get that thing. It was a pretty big slip up to allow that thing to move, but they did allow it to move. I mean, imagine if this was another kind of murder case. Once they moved that thing, they could have been, wiping blood on the inside or something like this. And they didn't know what kind of case it was at the time. So, I mean, I don't think it was a very efficient investigation at that stage. And the state police weren't involved yet, but there was that kind of gray area where the Canton police were waiting for them to take over. And obviously, then obviously they knew that a detective from their force, his brother, Lyndon, lived in the house. So they were not eager to go inside it for sure. And that's normally what happens when the police investigate the police, no question. That does not mean there's a conspiracy. It just is the way it is. Police are not going to be eager to go into another cop's house, just like they're not eager to pull him over. My comfort and joy, Olivia, you are amazing in all your research. Switch roles for him. Yeah, I think so. My comfort and joy says, Olivia, you are amazing with all your research. Switch roles for 1 minute and play the prosecution side. I think it's great to see it from all angles. Yeah, why not try to do that? I'm not sure where your interest is here. If you actually are connected to the defense in any way, then you can't do that. If you're just trying to practice for law school, being an advocate, maybe you don't want to do that. Or maybe you can just switch to the other side. If you're a journalism major, then you should be trying to get to the truth, because that's what journalism is supposed to be. That's most of these other channels that have spun up here, they're not interested in the truth. Now, you may not like my analysis, but I'm trying to give you the truth. And I've been trying to do that since day one, and I will continue to do that. And if something emerges about a conspiracy, I'll give it to you. You know that. Fiona says, how can specifics be answered when the details aren't revealed? Yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff we're not going to find out till the trial. I don't think that the investigators pay any attention to what any of these channels are saying. But if they were, I'm sure they'd be frustrated, because it is frustrating when someone can say something about your work and you can't do anything about it. You can't defend yourself. Like that guy, the Grifter, did last week. It was kind of frustrating because the things he was saying were so poorly informed and I couldn't say anything. So, yeah, it's a little frustrating, but it's all entertainment, right? See, that's the problem. That's the other thing with YouTube. It's all about entertainment and it's all about views. And you forget that these are real families, real people involved. Jen McCabe is a real person. John O'Keefe was a real person. His family are real people that are still grieving his loss. Jen is still grieving the loss of her friend. So, to be Colin is a young kid. who's just trying to get started with his life. So even if you think maybe there's something to it, unless you're certain, to be throwing out these kind of nastiness that people throw out here, just like it's like I said, it's something you see on the 6th grade when you don't want to stand, they're bullies start picking on the weak kids, and all the people in the middle are afraid that they might get targeted by the bullies, so they go stand with the bullies. So the bullies start throwing snowballs at the weak kids, and the other kids all join them. And next thing you know, everybody in recess is throwing snowballs at the weak kids. And that's just how it is. But every once in a while, there are those kids that are out there that weren't getting snowballs thrown at them. And they say, fuck you, I'm not going to go stand with the bullies. And you have a choice when you do a channel like this. Are you going to stand with the bullies or not? It's a choice. It's not all just fun and games. It's not all views. There's integrity. There's guts. And people have a choice. And there's all kinds of channels that have been popping up, including ones now from out of state. And they understand that if you just ride that turtle wave, you'll get a lot of views. But is that, can you look at yourself in the mirror after doing that? A lot of people can, because they don't, there's different ways you can look in the mirror if you've done something that isn't quite right. You can always say, hey, it was just a YouTube channel, right? I was just doing it for views and going on the information I had, blah, blah, blah. You could say, well, at least, so one of the things I got today from, like I said, I call her the first Karen reader I got this the other day. She's like, I don't care. Even if Karen is guilty, I'll still defend her because I know that this was a botched investigation, and I care about the Constitution. When she was making that statement, that's how I knew she was on the slide. Once people start doing that, they're starting to slide towards an understanding. They've gone from being certain that Karen is innocent to starting to change their argument a little bit. And that's how the slide begins. Kelly says that according to the report, multiple fragments of red taillight were found days later, and of course, and only 2 inches of white snow. Well, I'm trying to interpret what, obviously it's hard to type here for her, so this isn't a criticism. I'm trying to interpret her comment there. She's saying, I think what she means is, why didn't you find the red taillight pieces? And when there was at 6 a.m., there was only a couple of inches of snow. Well, I don't know how hard they were looking at 6 a.m. And I don't think they had at that time, any reason to think that this was a hit and run, because John had some odd wounds, and there was a cocktail glass there. So I think, and then John was whisked away within 10 minutes. So before they even had time to look at him or anything like that. So they probably were thinking he was in a fight outside in the lawn, maybe, and that's why they collected the blood drops. But those taillight pieces were not going to be visible because they were rolled up inside the plowed snow. And it was really just, it looks like, well, I haven't seen the pile, but we've seen the picture of the one piece. So it looks like it was one piece. And then the rest of them were probably just varying degrees of smaller pieces, all the way down to eventually they found microscopic taillight pieces in the clothing. And that's something that, when that report came out in September, I predicted that Turtle Boy won't tell his audience about it. And he didn't, until somebody on the questions at the end said to Turtle Boy, hey, what about the microscopic taillight pieces? And then, he knew about him. He just decided not to tell his audience, but then he couldn't resist it there. So he said, Trooper Proctor obviously sprinkled it on the clothing. Trooper Proctor sprinkled microscopic taillight pieces on John's clothing. It's just kind of crazy, the stuff to believe in this case. Carol says she's been following this for 23 months. Wow, that is a long time. And I think Carol's from Canton. So, good on her for wanting to stay on it and caring about justice. Larson says she agrees with me. Well, it's good to have someone agree. I'm not sure what she agreed with, but thank you. Appreciate it. Olivia, Kevin, in all fairness, you're no longer on the fence. You started your show off saying TB knows. Yes. Olivia, no, I'm not on the fence. I'm not on the fence. I was on the fence for months, and then I got enough evidence. So no, of course I'm not on the fence. I'm telling you, Karen Reed is guilty. But but there's still I'm also analyzing the evidence and trying to be fair at every piece of evidence, but I do have again, I can't go into the details, but Karen's lawyers know, Aidan Kearney knows, and Aidan Kearney's lawyer knows that Karen is guilty of second-degree murder. They know it with certainty. And, you can trust me on that or not. I don't blame you for not trusting. I don't blame you. No, you have no reason to mistrust me, but I don't blame you for being skeptical because I'm making a claim without showing you any evidence. So just file it away. And remember, you heard it here first. You may hear something about this next week. You may not. It really depends on other factors. You won't hear it from me. Tammy Becker says, you are such a dumbass to make Alberts have you in their pocket. Well, I may be a dumbass, but the McAlberts, I don't know who they are. I mean, all right, first of all, anybody that uses the expression McAlberts is not a serious person. They're not interested in truth. They're not interested in justice. There's no such thing as McAlberts. All right. You have McCabe's and you have Alberts, and they're trying to put that together, and they've turned it into this great boogeyman. And now they have they've set up Jen McCabe as this evil, dark villain. She's worse than Darth Vader. She's the Emperor. She's all shriveled and plotting all these plots. She's a freaking soccer mom. The stuff that you guys imagine her doing it. But okay, I'm the dumbass. I can't see it. Okay, you're right. Kelly says she just found her boyfriend dead. She probably did say, oh my, yeah, all right, I agree with this, that it's not necessarily indicative. I never thought it was indicative one way or the other what Karen said at that crime. I try to look at the evidence and then afterwards try to piece together what witness statements, and that would be a witness statement right there. That multiple people heard Karen say something similar to that. But you try to piece it together later after you've looked at the physical evidence for what that meant. Patty joined here. Thank you. Good to see you, man. Heel says everything is documented at a crime scene, video, photos. Yeah, you would think so. I've never run a murder investigation. I've seen them on TV. I would think that everything's documented meticulously, or at least it's supposed to be. I don't know. I mean, a friend of mine is a judge, and before he was a judge, was a prosecutor and spent years. He developed and ran a program on his own that was designed with the purpose of teaching better techniques to the police, not to solve a crime, but to document, and in particular to do the paperwork correctly, because he understood that a lot of cases were being dismissed in court, even though the person was guilty, but it was just from sloppiness in the paperwork and stuff like that. And so he, for years, ran that program. Judy says, of course, TB knows Karen is guilty. It's why he's going overboard. I mean, listen, he's got so much at stake here. He went all in on this case. I mean, he spent 10 years building up his reputation as an independent blogger. And it was a difficult road because even though he would break cases, because of his controversial, the only reason he got attention was because of his it's kind of a contradiction here. The only reason that he got all the attention, and he understood this, was because of his controversial nature. That's what drew people in, and that's why people leak stuff to him. However, that controversial nature also made him untouchable to regular media. And then there are a lot of unscrupulous media, such as the Globe, the Herald, and the Worcester Telegram, that took advantage of his stories and kind of pilfered them and didn't give him proper credit. So I think he feels somewhat abused, and he's been waiting for that big breakthrough. And he saw this case as his big breakthrough. So he was all in, even though you can see from the texts between him and Karen and Natalie back at the beginning, he wasn't all in at the beginning, but he was eventually all in. And now he has no choice. He has no choice. It's all riding on this. He took every chip on the table. That's what all in means. He pushed them all in. He had a pretty good, healthy pile. He's got a very good pile now. They're all in. What happens if, in his mind, he's thinking, what happens if it turns out Karen was guilty? Now, the reality is I think life will go on for him. I mean, because most of the people that still watch him will still watch. So I don't really think that it needs to be the end for him, but he's still in his own mind has attached a lot to this. Olivia said, thanks. I don't think you're picking on me. I have thick skin. I'm just not just out of high school. And if somebody posted it on Twitter, Olivia, so I really don't know anything about you. Nothing but respect. I've said that before on the show. I told Dave on the phone a couple days ago, he's like, Olivia is coming on my show maybe. And I said, oh, that'd be really awesome. I will definitely watch that. So, but it was just somebody that posted on Twitter that she just got out of high school. I really have no idea. What is on the pavement? So Wicked Psych says, what is on the pavement ends up on top of the snowbank when plowing. Well, no, I don't think so, because so let's say there's only 2 inches of snow at the time, right? And you have a plow bank, and that's going to end up being what, 10 inches tall, right? And everything that is in that bank, from the bottom of it to the top to the middle, all of that was plowed up off the pavement. So I don't know why. I'm not sure why you would think that. Did anyone witness Karen ask? This is from Heels. Did anyone witness Karen asking Jen to look up how to die in the cold? How long to die in this? She actually looked up how long to die in the cold. My initial reaction was to say yes, but now I'm actually not sure. So I think Kerry did witness that, but I'm not sure. So that's a good question that we should look up. If anybody has the answer to that, please post it here now. Did anybody else hear Karen asked Jen to search how long to die in the cold? So that's a question we have out there. If anybody can answer that, please do that. Mo says, I was right, Kevin. She just admitted she wasn't out of high school. Oh, wait a minute. I thought did I misread that? No, I think you misinterpreted that, Mo. I don't know. She said, I'm not just out of high school. So she's not someone that just got out of high school. So, but she is out of high school, I think. I don't know. Carol brings, this is the question that people have to be fairly asking, and Carrie brings it up. So Carol, don't the lies bother you? TV said Reed never left the bar. I mean, I know I've got some things wrong on the channel, but I don't lie to you. The other guy does all the time. I mean, just like when he said that he didn't talk to Karen and he didn't talk to Karen's lawyers, but now we all know that no one should have believed that. It was obvious he did, but now we know we have the receipts on that. We all know he's been talking to the lawyers since April and Karen herself since mid-May. But even before that, she was communicating more or less directly with Karen. He was through Natalie, but it was still more or less direct communication. Wicked Psych says, would he still be alive at 8 a.m.? I think he means 6 a.m., but if he was out in the blizzard since 12:30. And that's a really good question. And that's where we need to get. This is, unfortunately, in this case, we don't have medical people chiming in as much as we'd like to see. And so it drives me crazy that you can't go to court TV, someone national like that, and they can't get in doctors to answer basic questions like that. Those are questions that we've had since day one. All right. So John was wearing a t-shirt and then a long sleeve t-shirt, and I had at some point, but it looks like it got knocked off probably at the collision. So, and then he was without one shoe. I'm not sure what the temperature was, but it was pretty cold that night. It was snowing. I've seen it reported that it was down to 18 degrees at one time. That's pretty cold. How long can you survive like that? Are there circumstances that you can survive longer or less? We know that sometimes if somebody's in a certain low metabolic state, so for instance, if they fall under the ice, like this happens every year with kids, they fall under the ice and they sink to the bottom of the pond and the water is freezing and they can't breathe. And they're down there for an hour, You can't, and there's no way normally you can survive. And they brought up and they eventually revive. They might be in a coma for a couple hours or a day, but it's pretty common that they're able to revive them. And so it's some combination of the cold and not breathing and getting into a certain state in your body. But again, I'm not a medical expert, so I'm just an old bartender, bar owner. So, I mean, I just know we've seen that kind of stuff, right? You guys have seen it too. It's not just me. Olivia said the defense theory doesn't have to make sense. They have no burden. It's not our fault that the wow, did you just slip up, Olivia, and admit that you're part of the defense? That can be interpreted a couple ways, I guess, but the defense theory doesn't have to make sense. They have no burden. It's not our fault. The state didn't do a proper investigation. So do you mean our as in the defense or our as in the citizens of the state? It could go either way, I guess. But, just because there might be mistakes or shoddiness in an investigation, and don't get me wrong, that's important if that has to be exposed. But if that's the case, that doesn't mean there was a conspiracy, and it doesn't mean Karen didn't do it. So, and I think you're going to find in every investigation, when it's all done, there's probably a lot of things that, a million things get done during an investigation, right? And there's probably going to be a lot of things that a good defense team, a high-priced defense team can look at and say, 1, 2, all these little things, that's not quite right. And I think they can, and then they try to exploit that. But Timothy, I apologize. It is the truth. He 100% knows it. You're going to see it eventually. And that's all. Listen, like I said, put it away in the back of your mind. Don't base any of your decisions. Obviously, you're not basing anything. I know Timothy, the last person he would base a decision on is me. I hope he would at least trust me to make him a drink, since I used to be a bartender, if I still remember how to make them. But I'm sure no other decision or analysis would he trust in my hands. But even if you were inclined to, just keep it in the back of your mind. Don't base anything on what I just said there. But later on, when you learn why I said it, then you'll say, all right, he did tell me this. He did tell me this. And then you'll say, okay, he reports the truth. And again, I try not to be selfish in doing this channel, but that was selfish of me to do that. I thought about whether I should say it or not. And I was like, it's selfish to do it. I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to say it. And I'm going to tell people it was selfish and maybe they can forgive me for it. But it is the truth. And you're going to find it out. Jennifer Alpin says, don't you ever say that. I'm sliding towards Karen Reed and Bill Guilty. I never mentioned your name, Jennifer. So if you want to out yourself, you can. I have every fucking screenshot, she says, because that's what she is. She's already done this before. She's the one that reached out to me on Facebook, not the other way around. And then later on in the Karen in the groups, there was nothing even in that screenshot that was embarrassing, but she took that and posted it up there because that's what they are. That's what they are. That's what they do. They're sneaky little bastards that lie to you and that'll tell you one thing but they violate every privacy. All right. They violate every confidence because they don't have a soul. All right. Do you understand that? When you look in the mirror, Jen, do you realize you don't have a soul? All right. I mean, because some of you people that have latched onto this conspiracy that don't care about the truth, there you go. Now you want to show any screenshot you can, go ahead. Because as I type, I was aware that you would do that because I know you. All right. I blocked you after that just because I was trying to get work done and sick of the messages. But you were sliding. And then you realized it. And listen, I know how to make screenshots too if you want to play that game. And you said that even if Karen is guilty, I don't care. Because it was a shoddy investigation, and I believe in the Constitution. That's what you said. Okay, so if you outed yourself here, I didn't. You want to bring it up? Okay, there you go. Go screenshot it. See you, sister. Fiona says, how long to die in the cold during a blizzard is a pretty innocent question. She has 4 kids, so easily. Yeah, I mean, well, if for some reason Karen didn't ask that question and then Jen lied about it, that's a problem. I don't see how you would ever prove that. And like I said, I believe, well, we'll have to find out, but I believe that Kerry did. I believe Kerry did corroborate that, but I'm not sure. Hopefully someone else will say. Carol says, I've watched all the court TV segments on the case starting 13 months ago. So that's good. You're really well informed on it, Carol. And if you see anything that I don't see all of them, because sometimes I get disappointed that the conversation isn't as high level. And, they'll have on very good guests that clearly haven't really looked into the case in any kind of a deep way. And it gets frustrating. That's why I was looking forward to hearing Olivia talk, because I know has looked very deeply into the case. And those are the kind of experts that I want to see. So you bring in a former forensic person that testified in the Murdaugh case, or one of Murdaugh's lawyers, that's great. But if they haven't really dug into the case, the Karen Read case, they don't really have much of interest to tell us about it. And I haven't heard too much interest on there. All right. I'm sorry, Jen. I had to ban Jen Altman. That's the first one I banned in a while. I don't want to deal with her. She's just nasty. There's some of the people in this case that are on the other side and feel very strongly it's been a pleasant dealing with them. So for instance, Victoria Ventro, as every once in a while, reached out to me. And I've always found it to be a pleasant, intelligent conversation. And I think I've enjoyed talking to her. And there are other people that reach out to me. I don't know if she still is. She was one of the leaders in the Free Karen Read movement. So I appreciated her for her civility and her rationality and her reasonableness. I didn't find Jen Altman to be that way from the very first moment she reached out to me, screaming. And when I say screaming, it's screaming through Facebook chats. But I mean, you can just feel it, the energy. She really is that pit bull that Natalie described, and not really a rational, reasonable person. And that's whatever. I guess she is someone you want in your corner if you don't want her ever questioning things. But, So Kelly said, Kevin, why would you lie and say Jen is swaying toward the other side? I'll repeat just what I said. I said she's in the early stages of the slide. She won't make it because she doesn't really have the integrity to do it. But she was saying to me, and I gave her evidence that showed that there's really no way there's a conspiracy here. And she's one of those hardliners, but yet, so you could see it was getting through, because then she said, well, even if Karen is guilty, I don't care, because I know that the state ran a shoddy investigation and the Constitution matters to me. Now, I've been through this slide before with a lot of people who start out screaming at me, but they keep asking questions. And eventually they all end up on the other side of the fence. Because if you dig deep enough into this evidence here, unless you're just really biased, unless you just really, for some reason of your own, need there to be a conspiracy here, you always end up on the other side. And they all do. And I don't know of any exception to that. Just a lot of times you see people go quiet after that, and they'll message me. So if you've seen someone that was prominent in the Free Karen Read movement and then they disappear, that means they've jumped ship, and they just don't want to take on the mob. And so they communicate that to me in private. Yeah, she is, and Jennifer is an old, I guess, she's the one that introduced Turtle Boy to this case, was the go-between between Karen and Natalie and Turtle Boy. And I guess she's a long time, she had told me for 5 years, fan of his and communicating with him regularly. But again, there is kind of a character thing there. You're a woman, and you've seen some of the stuff that he's doing. You know what's out there, and doesn't bother you. So, okay. Olivia says, I had no idea who Turtle Boy was. I followed the case for the case. Turtle Boy was the only one covering it. That's true. And so that's how I had heard of Turtle Boy from some other people that had just mentioned him in passing over the years, but I'd never been to his website or his YouTube show before this spring. And that morning that the story broke, I got messages from different people in law enforcement saying, check this story out, just friends. And so he went on it. And then I talked about it with Dave, and we were like, wow, we got to jump on this, because this is going to be the conspiracy of our lives, right? This is going to be huge, and that'll be really good for the channel. But this is the thing was, Olivia, the only source for the information for all this summer was Turtle Boy. I had never talked to anybody on the other side, such as Kate or anybody. I had no connection to any of it. I don't like to generally go. I don't reach out and bother people that I don't know. And that's just the truth. All the people that I have communications with have come to me. And it was only after I had an episode where I got angry and lost my cool a little bit and yelled at Turtle Boy. After that, people from the other side started reaching out to me. But it was a great benefit, because now I could finally get what Turtle Boy wouldn't give, and that was documents. Turtle Boy, all summer, I kept trying to say, why don't you put the documents in a public place? He wouldn't do it. He wants to control the narrative. So instead, he would just put a part of a document on his website and then highlight. So you see what he wants you to see, or what they want you to see, because I don't think Turtle Boy reads the documents. I mean, I don't know for sure. He's a smart guy. He knows the case, but I believe I don't think he has the patience to read the documents. I know Olivia does, but I don't believe Turtle Boy does. I think he was being fed that stuff by the defense. I know he was. And that's what he puts up there. But I wanted to see the documents, the whole thing, as much as I could get. So every document I could get my hands on, eventually I started, once that door opened to me, started reading. And that's all you can do. And then you also get a few sources where they start to develop, where you're asking people on the other side, or different sources connected to different police. I had some connections to police before this case. So, I mean, you start developing sources. They just do friendships, but then eventually other people reach out to you. But every person that's ever contacted me with information on this case, I press them hard. That doesn't mean in the end that I get it right, but I'm not on anybody's side. And I want to make that clear to them, that I'm not on anybody's side. And I can tell you that they do repeat that to everybody else officially connected to this case, that he's not he is, yes, I've concluded that Karen is guilty, but I'm still an objective source. I'm not on the side of anybody else. And so, and I would like to hear how you first got started on the case, Olivia, how you got interested in it, what your goal is. You can type it here. That would be great. You're welcome to come on and talk here anytime you want. If not, I'll be watching you on Dave's show. Definitely. I like to hear people talk that are informed about the case and know all the details. My Comfort and Joy says there was much wrong with the investigation, some understandable, most not understandable, but it's pretty common in these high-profile cases because everything is under more scrutiny. Look at OJ and John Bonet. Yeah, that's a really smart comment, and that's definitely true, right? I mean, that's what we have to try to decide in these cases, what is corruption and what is just ordinary shoddiness, or things that look like shoddiness, but just regular human elements of any investigation. And that's where we were all summer. But as things have slowly fallen into place, no, you can see. So Alana, I actually like that theory. And if you haven't seen my animation, that's what I believe. She says he could have dropped his phone and was picking it up as she plowed him. That's what I believe. Now, I'm probably wrong, but I was trying to understand. We don't know exactly what the injuries are. We have the defense description of them, and the defense says that the only injury was the back of the head. We've all seen that photo from the autopsy. And then there's a couple of scratches on the face, and then the abrasions on the right arm, and that's it. There's doesn't seem to be any other injuries to his body, his back, his shoulders, his legs, or anything like that. And so I think it's important to understand how that happened, and we don't really know. And we're going to get some kind of an accident reconstruction. Kelly, why are you? I haven't ignored anybody's comments. So, are you talking to me, Kelly? Kelly's saying, "Why are you ignoring?" What comments have I ignored? Are you saying Jen Altman? I don't know. No, I blocked her, so I can't see Jen's comments. So I haven't gone on. I blocked her just here on the. I'm not blocking her off the site. I didn't block her off the YouTube channel. I just blocked her off. I'm doing this from StreamYard because they become distracting, her screaming matches and stuff like that. And, you know, she can go have a glass of wine and settle down and chew on a bone or something like that. Timothy, I understand you have to kind of read, your comment is fair. I'm going to read your comment out. I'm not going to be able to explain it. I'm going to challenge you to think it through. I'm not trying to be coy. There are just things that I can't say. And so you have to just kind of accept that. But I've given you the information. I've given you the dots, and you can connect them. It's not obvious, but it's also not beyond something that people can't do. So Timothy says, Kevin can't tell us the info, and it won't ever come out in the trial. Makes perfect sense. Okay? Yeah. So think it through. Judy said, I'm thinking the grand jury saw Reed drinking 9 drinks, and I'm speculating something bad on Jen's phone from Reed. Carol, I'm sorry, I can't say. I don't know. No, I can't say. I'm sorry. I just can't tell you that. I know it for certain, but I just can't say. It may, but like I said, I think there's a good chance it'll come out next week. It might not. Depends on other things, but trying to get caught up. So yeah, Colin did leave before Reed arrived, before Reed and John arrived. That's confirmed by data. At 9:20, oh, I'm still behind. At 9:22, Paul checked in. I don't know if he's still here. Paul, this is the first time I've seen you here, but I'm very sorry about your loss. And I hope your family has a very good holidays and stay strong. Thank God you guys are there for your nephew and niece and for your own family. You're going to see Cal. Well, she was sliding, but usually that is when people slide, but she's the last one to slide, because think about how much she's invested of her life, her mental energy over the last, I don't know, at least the last 8, 9, 10 months into this case. It's everything for some of these people. And it's a huge thing to find out that everything that you put all your energy into was basically a lost cause. Kelly said 1/16 of an inch is not microscopic. That's a fair comment. And I will note that. So the lab described it as not microscopic. I'm sorry. The lab described the taillight pieces as microscopic. And then there was another description of it later. There was 1/16 of an inch. And I do agree that if it's closer to 1/16 of an inch, then it would be visible to the naked eye. But technically microscopic does mean invisible to the naked eye. So I guess it's possible, right, that Michael Proctor carries around a little test tube of very tiny pieces of taillight plastic that he can sprinkle on the clothing. And this stuff was found like really interwoven into the clothing, like because it's something that can only be done by high impact, but maybe he did it. Carol, so Aiden believes Karen is guilty. He knows it. He knows it. Just can't say it. Tina says, Carol, Kevin just likes to lie about people. He lied about Jen Altman. Nope. I've got the screenshots. I got them too. That's all right. If we want to play that game, I'll play. I mean, it seems boring to me, but I can tell you what she said, you know, to go back and screenshot somebody's private. But that is what she said. She said, even if Karen is guilty, that she doesn't care because it was a bad investigation and she cares about the Constitution. Go ahead. Don't just look at the screenshot she sends you. Look at the whole thing. I get screenshots too. Even this boomer can take a screenshot. Will Scott says the term McAlberts is a favorite of the highly gullible cult members. Yeah, absolutely. It's just not, people using that word, it's not serious. And you can joke around about certain things, but this is a murder case. And, you know, the people that you're pointing an accusing finger at, there's no evidence that they've committed a crime. There's none. Thank you, Judy. Judy also is very objective, has followed the case a long time and stays on both sides. And she said Kevin has a large fan base. Yeah, obviously it's nothing like Turtle Boys. Or really, my fan base is never going to be anything close to what the conspiracy thing base is. That's just the way it is. People like the conspiracy, not just this conspiracy, any conspiracy. Tina says, Aiden wasn't all in because he was asking questions to verify. He was not all in until he was all in, until he ran with the story, and then he was all in. But before that happened, he was asking hard questions. He's a smart guy, and he is able he is able to ask tough questions. Heels, you said Yellow Cottage, what did TV win an award for? It's kind of funny you asked this question. I don't know where you're from, but I owned a bar in Worcester for many years. And there's a magazine, a weekly magazine called Worcester, or maybe even a month. No, it's a weekly magazine, Worcester Magazine. And every year they have a contest for best bar, best bartender, and stuff like that. And they have standard categories, and anybody can vote. And you can vote as many times as you want. But in addition to that, in order to encourage people to go out and buy vote, you know, maybe it might cost $1 to vote. I forget. But you can organize these campaigns for something that there isn't a category for. So you could, for instance, say, if everybody writes in, if enough people write in for best auto mechanic, they'll publish an award for best auto mechanic as long as they get enough votes for it. And so it was very easy to do that. But we did kind of a campaign for that ourselves. There was one of the girls that worked for us was very good bartender, good kid, and so she wanted to win it, so we wanted to make sure she won it. So we helped organize a campaign so that she won best bartender. But in addition, while we were doing that, we organized another campaign for a friend of mine who wasn't bartending anywhere. He had bartended briefly somewhere and then no longer had a job. And so we got that, but he actually won best bartender and got to take the picture, and that helped him get a bartending job. So it was totally bogus in the sense that he really had only bartended very briefly. So Turtle Boy won best journalist or something like that, some kind of award like that at Worcester Magazine. It's not real. No critics voted on it. It was just something that he was able to organize with his followers. And I think for a long time, him just saying, I assume, award-winning journalist, he's just kind of tongue-in-cheek. But then when it starts to work, when Court TV will say award-winning journalist or something like that. People take it as though it's a real thing. And then he says, okay, I guess I'll go with it, All right. I can't see Jen's comment. Tina's saying if Kevin wasn't such a liar. I'm not lying. I don't lie. I can show you the screenshots. It seems stupid. I never mentioned Jen's name. I said she was the first Karen reader, and her antenna went up and she came flying in here someplace that she's normally not in. But I never said her name. I just described the conversation pieces. And when I have time later today, if I'm bored, I'll go and I'll I'll get the screenshots and put them in there. And Will said, isn't it time for the cult to go pay the tow boy some money? Yeah, it's time to go give him some money. All right. Been a long show. Skipping to the end. Oh, not even to the end. Shit. Sorry, it's hard to stay caught up on the comments. I tried. All right. If I missed your question, I apologize. I did my best to keep up. I read through as many as I could. But guys, thank you very much. I don't know. I'm working. I have a lot of other work that I'm going to be doing for some other projects that have been suffering because of doing these shows. So I'm going to make these shows a lot less frequent. No more than one a week, and maybe even less than that while I work on these other shows. Obviously, I'll be covering any big stories that break. Or I'll report it on Twitter and that kind of thing. But it's fun doing this, but it's time consuming. And so I need to save some of my energy for some other things. So guys, thank you for being here. Have a very good night. And I will see all of you on the next show.